Welcome all of you. My name is Dr. Mohammad Fiaz from University of Education, DG Khan campus. In the last lecture, we were discussing about classification of insecticides, and there we cover a small introduction about different types of insecticides on the basis of their chemical nature. Today, we will cover major types of insecticides, and our focus will be synthetic insecticides. As in our agricultural system, most of the insecticides used are synthetic ones. First of all, we will cover the insecticides based on the plant origin. Sometimes these are also called botanicals because the origin of these insecticides is plants. Historically, the plant materials have been in use longer than any other group, with the possible exception of sulfur. Tobacco, pyrethrum, and darius were some of the more important plant products in the use before the organized search for insecticides began in the early 1940s. In recent years, the term biorational has been put into play by the Environmental Protection Agency. There are similarities and differences between the terms botanical and biorational. Pyrethrum is now the only classical botanical of significance in use. Some newer plant derived insecticides that have come into use are referred to as florals and scented plant chemicals and include limonene, cinnamon, aldehyde, and eugenol. In addition, there is azadirachtin from the neem tree, which is used in greenhouse and ornamentals. Pyrethrum is extracted from the flowers of chrysanthemum, which is grown in Kenya and Ecuador. It is one of the oldest and safest insecticides available. The derived flowers were used in the early 19th century as the original louse powder to control body lice in the Napoleonic War. Pyrethrum acts on insects with a phenomenal speed, causing immediate paralysis. Thus, its popularity in fast knockdown household aerosols. However, unless it is formulated with one of the synergies, most of the paralyzed insects recover to once again become pests. Pyrethrum is a mixture of four compounds: pyrethrins 1 and 2 and cynerines 1 and 2. The mode of action of pyrethrum is, as you know, it's a axonic poison, and axonic poisons are the synthetic pyrethrides and DDT. Axonic poisons are those that in some way affect the electrical impulse transmission along the axons. Nicotine is extracted by several methods from tobacco and is effective against most all types of insect pests, but is used particularly for aphids and caterpillars, which are soft bodied insects. Nicotine action is one of the first classic modes of action identified by pharmacologists. Drugs that act similar to nicotine are said to have a nicotinic response. Nicotine mimics acetylcholine at the neuromuscular junction in mammals and results in twitching, convulsions, and death, all in rapid order. In insects, the same action is observed, but only in the central nervous system ganglia. Neem oil extracts are squeezed from the seeds of neem tree and contain the active ingredient azadirachtin. Azadirachtin has shown some rather sensational insecticidal, fungicidal, and bactericidal properties, including insect growth regulating qualities. Azatin is marketed as insect growth regulators, and align and Nemix as a stomach contact insecticide for greenhouse and ornamental. Azadirachtin disrupts molting by inhibiting biosynthesis or metabolism of ecdysone, which is juvenile molting hormone. First of all, we will cover the insecticides based on the plant origin. Uh, Antibiotics, this category belongs the ivermectins, which are insecticidal, acariciidal, and anti-helminthes agents that have been isolated from the fermentation products of Streptomyces avermellitis, a member of the actinomycete family. Abamectin is the common name assigned to the ivermectins. Abamectin has certain local synthetic qualities, permitting it to kill mites on a leaf's underside when only the upper surface is treated. The most promising uses of these materials are the control of spider mites, leaf miners, and other difficult to control greenhouse pests, and internal parasites of domestic animals. Ivermectins block the neurotransmitter, which is GABA receptor, at the neuromuscular junction in insects and mites. Visible activity such as feeding and egg laying stops shortly after exposure, although death may occur for several days later. Insect growth regulators, which are oftenly called IGRs, are chemical compounds that alter growth and development in insects. The IGRs disrupt insect growth and development in three ways: as juvenile hormones, as procosines, and as chitin synthesis inhibitors. The IGRs are effective when applied in very minute quantities and generally have few or no effects on humans and wildlife. They are, however, non-specific since they affect not only the target species, other arthropods as well. Instead of killing directly, IGRs interfere in the normal mechanisms of development and cause the insects to die before reaching the adult stage. For practical purposes, IGRs are used on crops to suppress damaging insect numbers. They would be applied with the purpose of preventing pupal development or adult emergence, thus keeping the insects in the immature stages, resulting eventually in their deaths. Commercial successful pheromones have shown activity on mosquito larvae, caterpillars, and hemipterans. Although effects have been observed on practically all insect orders, the common examples of the IGRs are methoprene, pyriproxyfen, buprofizin, and tibufenozide. As previously we have studied the major classes of insecticides, which were organochlorines, organophosphates, and carbamates. Now we will briefly discuss all of the classes, their examples, and mode of actions of those insecticides groups. As previously we have studied the major classes of insecticides, which were organochlorines, organophosphates, and carbamates. Now we will briefly discuss all of the classes, their examples, and mode of actions of those insecticides groups. Organophosphates, sometimes also called OPs, is the term that includes all insecticides containing phosphorus. Other names used but no longer in vogue are organic phosphates, phosphorus insecticides, nerve gas relatives, and phosphoric acid esters. All organophosphates are derived from the one of the phosphorus acids and as a class are generally the most toxic of all pesticides to vertebrates. Because of the similarity of OP chemical structures to the nerve gases, their modes of actions are also similar. Their insecticidal qualities were first observed in Germany during the World War II in the study of the extreme toxic OP nerve gas sarin, soman, and tuban. Initially, the discovery was made in search of substitutes for nicotine, which was heavily used as an insecticide but in short supply in Germany. The mode of action of OPs, they also work by inhibiting certain important enzymes of the nervous system, namely cholinesterase, The enzyme is said to be phosphorylated when it becomes attached to the phosphorus moiety of the insecticides, a binding that is irreversible. This inhibition results in the accumulation of acetylcholine at the neuron, and neuron junctions or synapses, causing rapid twitching of voluntary muscles and finally paralysis. The OPs are carbon chain like in structure. The first OP brought to be agriculture was TEPP in 1946, belonged to this group. Other examples are malathion, trichlorophon, monocrotophos, dimethoate, dicrotophos, disulfoton, dichlorvos, mavenphos, methanophos, and acephate. The phenyl OPs contain a phenyl ring with one of the ring hydrogens displayed by attachment to the phosphorus moiety and other hydrogens frequently displaced by chlorine, CH3, CN, or sulfur group. The phenyl OPs are generally more stable than the aliphatics, thus, their residues are longer lasting. The first phenyl OP brought into the agriculture was parathion in 1947. Examples of other phenyl OPs are methylparathion, profenophos, sulprophos, isophenopos, and phenthrithion, phantheon, and phamphor. As previously we have studied the major classes of insecticides, which were organochlorines, organophosphates, and carbamates. Now we will briefly discuss all of the classes, their examples, and mode of actions of those insecticides groups. The carbamate insecticides are derivatives of carbamic acid, as the OPs are derivatives of phosphoric acid. And like the OPs, the first successful carbamate insecticides, carbaryl, was introduced in 1956. More of it has been used worldwide than all of the remaining carbamates combined. Two distinct qualities have made it the most popular carbamate: its very low mammalian oral and dermal toxicity, and an exceptionally broad spectrum of insect control program. Other long lasting carbamate insecticides are methomyl, carbofuran, LD-carb, oxamyl, thiodecarb, methocarb, propoxer, bendiocarb, carbosulfon, aldoxicarb, promicarb, and phenoxycarb. Carbamates more recently introduced include primicarb, indoxacarb, registered in 2000, alincarb, and furothiocarb. The mode of action of carbamates, they inhibit cholinesterase as OPs do, and they behave in almost identical manner in biological systems, but with two main differences. Some carbamates are potent inhibitors of aliesterase, and their selectivity is sometimes more pronounced against the cholinesterase of different species. Second, cholinesterase inhibition by carbamates is irreversible. When cholinesterase is inhibited by carbamate, it is said to be carbamylated, as when an OP results in the enzyme being phosphorylated. In insects, the effects of OPs and carbamates are primarily those of poisoning of central nervous system. So this was all about the classification of insecticides and also about today's lecture. See you in the next one.